Jack, shows are yours, man. Take it from me.
Appreciate it, Rick, and thanks for having me here today. This is a topic that I am very, very passionate about, and something that I think about pretty much all day, every day nowadays. Now, here's why. Before jumping into everything, folks, I'll just quickly introduce myself. So my name is Jack Coopersmith, often known as Jack Coopersmith here, as well as I do lead the go-to-market efforts for Commerce Hub, which is HubSpot's newest, or I should say second newest product line, now that we have Content Hub shipped. So I can't say that anymore. Quick intro on myself, folks. I do live in Boston. It is, of course, basketball season, and the Celtics are in the finals, so I'm feeling pretty excited about that. Go Celtics. We'll see what happens tonight when it comes to the Western Conference Finals. But that's been something that I've been enjoying for these past few weeks. I've been at HubSpot for a little bit more than 7.5 years now. I think I'm the first and only HubSpotter that's ever had roles in our marketing, sales, customer success, and now product organizations. So I've jumped around quite a bit. I've been on the Commerce Hub team, though, for about 2.5 years. So I actually started before HubSpot Payments was launched, and we have grown quite a bit since then. I think that's even an understatement. It's a completely different product than what it was 2.5 years ago. I'm also confident in saying it'll be a completely different product in 2.5 years from now as well, because we really do have a lot of innovation going on in my world. And this is a product line that the company is really investing in more broadly. So before just getting into everything, of course, Rick and I want to set the stage and just give you all a little bit of insight as to what you can expect to learn out of today's session. Of course, we're going to get into the tools themselves, folks. I promise this will not be too deck heavy of a conversation, because I really do want to get into the actual tools and make this very practical for you folks. But at the highest level, we'll chat with you about how we're thinking about B2B commerce in 2024 as a company. And as we really see the market change, how we're going to be building those tools so that you all can capitalize on the changes in the market that we are seeing. And then, of course, we're going to get into those very practical use cases as well as to some of the different ways that you all can use tools, whether they're commerce tools, whether they're HubSpot's commerce tools or not, frankly, to hopefully allow for you all to get paid faster, save some time in your day, and ideally increase your revenue. So, folks, we'll get into the specifics on all of these things. And again, I'll be showing you exactly what everything looks like within HubSpot, but just at the highest level, that's what you can expect out of these next 20, 25 minutes or so. We also, of course, want to leave opportunity for questions. So if you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to drop them in the chat. Rick, I know we chatted about this a little bit earlier, but if you have anything on your mind, or if you want me to double click into anything, please don't hesitate to interrupt me mid-sentence, and we can definitely get into everything.
You got it.
Love it. So before getting into the core of the actual tools themselves, folks, let me just first take a step back and chat philosophically about how HubSpot is seeing the commerce space in general, especially for B2B organizations, change over time. Now, the status quo here, and I'm sure this will resonate with some of the folks who are watching this here today, is folks will generally manage all of their customers within their CRM. So those marketing efforts, those sales efforts, those customer service efforts, all of those customer motions and data all live within the CRM. However, those exact same customers are often billed in a completely separate and disconnected commerce system. This leads to a lot of inefficiencies between teams. This leads to different data silos, and ultimately it leaves a lot of opportunity on the table for you all to be able to streamline your operations, specifically what we say, streamlining your opportunity to your actual revenue process. Of course, you're managing those opportunities within HubSpot. We want to allow for you all to fully finish the swing on all things commerce and manage all of that within the CRM. So folks, of course, I work at HubSpot. I'm going to be chatting mostly about the HubSpot tools here, but just at the highest level, whether you are using the HubSpot platform or not, your commerce motion should be alongside your customer motion, regardless of the tools that you are using. Now, some of you all may be wondering, okay, that sounds fine, but what does that actually mean? I just wanted to give you all a little bit of insight before I even show you these tools, and you will see exactly this in real time, folks. I can promise you all that. But what we really mean here is actually managing the billing process within HubSpot and having all of your customer data within HubSpot. I could have chose a lot of different screenshots to show here, folks, but the reason why I wanted to show this is because if you do use HubSpot at all, I imagine that this is an interface that you've seen so many times. It's what we call an object index page. So if you want to see a list of your contacts and companies, this is what it looks like. You will see that the commerce data that we have looks, feels, and functions in the exact same way as everything else. So folks, this is the first and only screenshot I'll show you. I promise I will indeed be getting into the tools themselves, but I just wanted to give you all a little bit of insight as to what this actually means. So let me first shine a light though as to some of these current trends. And Rick, curious if you have any thoughts on this here. I'll just tie this back to myself, and I imagine that this is something that a lot of folks would resonate. We've seen the world of classic, what we think of as e-commerce, move unbelievably quickly over the past few years, really, but let's call it decade and a half. Shopify, Amazon, these have literally completely changed the world that we live in and completely changed buyer expectations, especially in a post-pandemic world when you're used to ordering pretty much anything and having it at your doorstep essentially the next day. So we've seen e-commerce, what we think of as classic e-commerce, really innovate a tremendous amount and really change the world in so many ways. But the B2B commerce motion hasn't really changed much at all this century. Rick, I'd love to put you on the spot. I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'll just go for it anyway. What percent of B2B transactions do you think are done via paper check?
Bro, I bet it's more than it should by this
More
point.
than
You tell me.
40%. 40%.
Way too much. Crazy.
Way too much. And a lot of folks will say something like, well, yeah, paper checks are free, it's fine. They're not. A lot of studies indicate that it's actually between $12 to $30 to process that manual check. And so I don't know about you, Rick, but I've had the same paper checkbook since my mom took me to open a bank account when I was like 12 years old. I don't use paper checks. Businesses don't need to either. And our hope is that as we continue to innovate, specifically in this B2B commerce space, is that folks will save some more time and ultimately move into the 21st century. Hey, we're almost a quarter of the way through it at this point too, which is a pretty crazy thing to say. So folks, this is where I do want to jump into the demo of everything. And to give you all just some insight as to where I'm going to be taking us here, I want to touch on a couple of different things. I mentioned earlier the whole notion of getting paid faster. I mentioned increasing revenue. I also mentioned saving time. These are really those use cases that my team is trying to solve for all day, every day. And so instead of just walking you all through, here's how this tool works and this tool and this tool, what I want to do is show you all some very practical use cases that fall into all of those three different things around increasing revenue, saving time, and getting paid faster. I'm actually going to skip ahead from streamlining quote to cash and talk about new revenue streams first. And folks, I'm going to show you all some tools that we've had for quite some time. Then I'm going to pivot to some of the new tools that we have, as well as some of the things that you all may not have in your account yet, but you will be seeing in the next week or so. So I'll give a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to what's on the roadmap as well. When it comes to increasing revenue, of course, there are a number of different ways that folks and organizations can think about this. What I always like to touch on, though, is payment links. Payment links are really the Swiss Army knife of Commerce Hub. And folks, once you actually choose a payment processor, so you either enroll in HubSpot Payments if you're in the United States by just, clicking on Commerce and then Commerce, or if you're outside of the United States, or if you really want to continue using Stripe, you can plug in your Stripe account in about 30 seconds. Then from right there, you can start using these payment links, folks, and putting them absolutely everywhere with no cost whatsoever. So payment links are very flexible. And folks, I'll just click into this one that I've already created and show you all a couple of different things that I personally really like about payment links. Of course, if you wanted to do one-time or recurring payments, that could not be easier. You just tell us these inputs and then we will do the rest of the work for you. I'll mention a couple of other things. Maybe you're selling tickets, for example, and you wanted to allow for someone to select the number of tickets. If someone selects 3 tickets at 5,000, those would be pretty expensive tickets, but in that case, it would be a $15,000 checkout right here. Optional items as well. I'll show you what this is as opposed to describing it too much. And then if you are in that nonprofit space, you can indeed, it's not just for nonprofits, but I'll call it out for nonprofits. You can allow customers to set their own price. I'm sure you all have seen something where you can type in the amount to pay and then pay that amount. That's what that feature is. Now, folks, a payment link really is just a link that you can put absolutely anywhere online. And I'll give you some other ideas on this, but let me just quickly show you all this optional products motion where you can add and remove. And then if you wanted to come in and select 6 tickets in this case, you'll see 30,000 right here. So that's a quick walkthrough on payment links. But when it comes to increasing revenue, how does this exactly help? I have talked to so many businesses over the years, folks, that have said something to the effect of, I've been selling through a sales rep for as long as I can remember. My product or service is too complicated. I always have to sell it through a sales rep. I would respectfully disagree with that notion, especially when it comes to tools like payment links. We've seen so many people open up new and very efficient revenue streams using these tools. So let me give some quick examples here, folks. I'd say probably the easiest thing that any single person could sell is your time. You can come in and when you're creating a given meetings link, so these are schedule pages, you'll see the ability to toggle on collect payments, where you'll then be able to come in and select your payment form. So what does this actually look like? This is where I can literally come in and you'll see there's a price on this meeting and you cannot book this meeting until that payment is made. So let's say maybe you're in the consulting space. Is there a world where you can put up your calendar for maybe a 1 hour conversation, for example, and open up a completely new revenue stream? I certainly think so. You can also connect payment links to forms, marketing email, the CMS. There's so many different ways that you can use these tools. So when it comes to just increasing your revenue, I think there's a lot on the table when it comes to opening up new revenue streams entirely and rethinking how you take your products and services to market online. The favorite example, folks, that I always use here is a divorce lawyer of ours, not of ours, but one of our customers is a divorce lawyer selling services online just like this. Folks, if they can do it, you probably can too. So I'd always encourage you all to think about how can we use our website instead of just making it a lead generation engine, turn your website into an actual revenue generation engine. So if you're not thinking through that lens, folks, I'd encourage you to, because your competition probably is, and you don't want to be left behind. So that's what I wanted to touch on when it comes to opening up new revenue streams. We talk about getting paid faster. Let me chat with you all about what exactly I mean by that. As I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure you may be using, HubSpot does indeed have this deal pipeline. I'm sure it goes without saying, but you can absolutely customize these stages. And the vast majority of the time that I show someone this interface, they know exactly what they're looking at. It really is just a deal pipeline to manage that linear sales process. What we currently see, though, as the current state of commerce is often when you get to that final stage or almost that final stage, what reps will often do is they'll often have to reach out to their finance team and say, hey, can you send this person an invoice for XYZ? And then maybe follow up a few days later and say, did you end up sending that invoice? No, sorry, I was on vacation. I'll send it right now. Did they pay the invoice? I don't think so. We need to now follow up on that invoice. You can really slow down here at what I would argue is one of the most important parts of the customer journey and the part where you really want to capitalize on the momentum that you have to actually turn someone into a customer. What you'll see is right on the right sidebar of these deals. If I wanted to come in and simply send an invoice right from HubSpot, I can do so from right here. I can convert the deal into an invoice. I can create a blank one. If I wanted to create a payment link in 3 clicks and send it out, I could easily do that as well. And so, folks, what this is all about is allowing for you and your team to be more empowered when it comes to being able to close that deal and hopefully recognize that revenue in your bank account sooner without having to worry about following up on overdue invoices or anything of the sort. And folks, that leads me to the last thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to a practical use case around saving time. Rick, I'm going to put you on the spot again here, if you don't mind, with just like a little trivia that I really like to use. So QuickBooks did a study a couple of years ago. QuickBooks, of course, being a major accounting tool owned by Intuit, and they estimated about how much money is wasted by businesses, or excuse me, how many hours are wasted by businesses each year following up on late payments. How many hours do you think is
Oh,
following up on late payments?
it's gotta be on many millions of hours, man. That's
56.4 million. 56.
yeah, I bet.
Like, I don't know how many hours are in a year, but that is a lot of years. That's a lot of time. Probably even then some. In fact, I should probably do that math for the next time I throw out this stat. But an unbelievable amount of time is wasted simply following up on overdue invoices, folks. Also, things like failed payments, for example. All of that, folks, are just wasting their time. And I don't know about you all, but I don't particularly enjoy combing through a spreadsheet of data and then finding one cell in that spreadsheet that looks like a problem and then getting on top of it. There is so much that you can do to lean into automation in order to make your lives easier, but also your customers' lives easier as well. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that I showed you all that screenshot. I called out the fact that these are objects within the CRM. I want to just quickly circle back to that, folks, before showing you exactly how you can use these tools to save some time. Anytime a recurring payment is made, a subscription record is created automatically. This represents that recurring payment. And folks, I'm going to show you a little something I'm excited about that is currently in a very private beta, but will be rolled out in the very near future. You can automatically charge a given payment. So Netflix, think about that. Or what you can do now is create an invoice automatically and send it out to your customers. So maybe you wanted to charge $100 at the beginning of every month. You will indeed now have these invoices automatically created and moved over to your buyer so that they can pay it. What you'll also see, folks, again, I called this out, but I do just want to shine a little bit more of a light on it. Invoices are both a payable artifact that you can send to someone. They're also, of course, a CRM object as well. And then finally, the payment object simply represents a transaction. So folks, this is really how we're representing the commerce data. And when it comes to bringing your billing and your commerce motion into HubSpot, being able to simply send that invoice directly from your CRM is exactly what I mean. Now, the reason, folks, that I went from workflows back to these objects and now back to workflows is because I want to just open up the door to what I think is probably the most powerful tool that HubSpot has, which is indeed our workflow automation engine. Let's say, for example, you wanted to send someone some emails after they submit a form. You would create a contact-based workflow in that circumstance because contacts submit forms. Now, what if you wanted to follow up on an overdue invoice? You can create an invoice-based workflow. The trigger is simply status equals open. The due date is before today. That's it, folks. It is that easy to follow up on overdue invoices, whether they're internal notifications or whether it's actually tokenizing that link for the invoice and sending it out in an email to your customer. Renewal management, I'll just call that out as well. Every subscription will have a next payment date or an end date, assuming you don't have an open-ended subscription. If you wanted to create a subscription-based workflow that says end date is a month from today, for example, and then get on top of that renewal, it could not be easier. Maybe if a payment fails, you do unpaid subscription status and then notify whoever you will from right there. So folks, those are the main things I wanted to touch on with you all. I want to make sure that we do indeed have some time for questions, but just a quick recap. Regardless of where you're managing your commerce, regardless of where you're managing your customers, I would really encourage you all to think about bringing that customer and that commerce motion together and bringing those data sets together as well. And ideally, that will help you get paid faster by being able to bill directly from your CRM, increase your revenue by opening up new revenue streams that otherwise you'd be leaving on the table, and then really leaning into our reporting and automation engine to hopefully save some time, get some insights that you otherwise wouldn't get, and really close your computer earlier each day and spend more time doing the work that you actually enjoy doing as opposed to going through spreadsheets and following up once you actually learn that you're having a cash flow issue. So, folks, there's a lot more that we could have gotten into today, but just at the highest level, that is really the benefit of bringing your commerce motion together with your customer motion with some practical use cases. I'd love to open up to questions. Rick, I know that you all have chatted about automation, though, so if you have any other thoughts on what I've mentioned so far, obviously would love to hear them.
Sure. I think what we can do is we'll go ahead and move into the questions portion, and we can also talk a little bit about automation. What I'm going to do now, everybody, is I'm going to stop the recording. So, Jack, thank you so much for the presentation.